Today's episode is going to blow your mind in the best way possible. Ever heard someone say menopause is really men-pause? Well, our guest, Dr. Lenka Schulze, is here to show us that midlife isn't just about pressing pause on men, it's about pressing reset on ourselves. Wondering how it works? Stick around because by the end of the show, you might just see this whole midlife thing from a fresh, exciting perspective. Let's dive on in. Lenka Schulze, welcome to Create the Best Me. It's an honor to have you on the show.
Thank you, Carmen. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Lenka, could you please tell the viewers and listeners a little bit about who you are and what you do?
I am Lenka. I love to just end right there, honestly. Just the stuff behind that, it's not that important to me because I feel that the doing is just aspect of busyness versus the being. So what I'm doing, I'm trying to be more, do less. And that is the wonderful time to be in, honestly. And if somebody would like a little bit more, I would consider myself a writer, educator, Intuologist. I have a doctorate degree in the world of the unseen. So I love to talk about the things that people don't necessarily sense with these five senses. But it is very important that people start realizing that that world of the unseen world is as powerful as the physical that we live in day in, day out.
Mm. And the reason why I invited you onto the show is because you have written a book called Intuition, Listening to Your Inner Voice. How do we do that?
Yes, I feel that intuition is something that everybody knows what that is, but nobody really does. It's so thrown around and, oh my gosh, yes, I got the vibe. Oh, my stomach, I got the gut feeling. And yes, that is all intuition, but it's more than that. The intuitive sense is the first sense that we have been born with. Because as a baby, you don't necessarily have your vision developed completely, right? You even have your little hands curled so you can't really touch your mama, but you know where she is. You know if somebody enters the room and you don't like them because you start screaming. So these are the subtle languages that we start speaking without words. So the intuition is a language that doesn't need words. Actually, words often takes you into the mind, and then the mind will bring the intellect in, and that's where the intuition stops. It's very important that intellect and intuition does bring in the balance. It's very important so we can make sense of what we're sensing. Yes, but if we're going back into the what is intuition, it's the language of our soul. And so first is, what is a soul? How do I get in touch with that? And why would I want to do that? It is actually very important GPS in our system that very many of us are actually have it turned off.
What do you think makes us turn it off? Do you think it's our experience? You touch something, you burn your fingers, and then you just say, oh, that hurt. And so our experiences tell us, don't listen to intuition, because the last time we listened to intuition, we got hurt.
That could be it. But I also feel it's mainly our surroundings. So if you think about it, before the real GPS that we follow in a car, we had our maps. Before our maps, we have our experiences, right? We were on horses and so on and so forth. So we can go back into the beginning of times that you only had senses. So if we are born with that amazing sense to give us direction in life in any aspect, if it's health, if it's business, if it's relationships, any of that, and then somebody comes in and just say, well, that's great that you feel this, but I'm telling you, you have to do this. So that voice is very authoritative, and we have, as a children, we have to listen. Because there's a consequences. You don't fit in, you get punished, and the intuitive sense is squished down. And when we are squishing that down, then eventually it becomes like if you don't use it, you lose it, right? But the beautiful thing about it is in our midlife, the intuition starts coming back if you like it or not, and it becomes loud. Oh, that's what I love about it. The sixth sense coming back. And it is in females and males. It doesn't really matter. So it is a wonderful thing that we do have a second chance around to bring that amazing GPS back into our life.
Why do you think? Do you think because the busyness starts to slow down? Because I have noticed that when I entered menopause or perimenopause, and I have all these like senses, all these changes that are going on, I sort of noticed that there was this stronger sense that was coming, but almost sort of like settling all the other things that were causing disruption, if that makes sense.
Totally. I am a very curious person, so I always take things and I bring it to the more broader perspective. And I grew up in Europe, so I have different experiences, different memories, different way of understanding things. And everything I believe in, I call it the belief systems. So I'm noticing that the belief system, the BS coming from my culture is different than the American culture when they looks at the menopause. But I also like words. So let's just look at the word menopause. Men, pause. So is it something that we need to pause the men in our life, not stop? It doesn't called stop, pause, right? It's just pausing something. It's just pausing everything else around you and have a reset, have it kind of like, okay, so what's really going on? And when we're looking at it from the broader perspective and actually bring it all the way to the cosmos, and we're talking to the astrologist that, it is really ancient knowledge. It has a value beyond understanding. And I am not expert, far from it, actually. But I found enough information to get people hooked to maybe look at it themselves. So what I found from reading books and from my own experiences is that we go through three big, huge, major changes in our life. So first of all, it's somewhere around 30. And if people go back into their 30s, something happens. If it's maybe new family, maybe already divorced, maybe you moved out of state, completely, something changed on a physical level, okay? So that is one. It's called a Saturn return, if people want to know what actually is happening astrologically. And around the 38 and 44, we have the Uranus opposition. That is kind of where the midlife crisis starts happening. Things start shifting. You are antsy in your career job. You are kind of like irritated with things around you, but you still don't have enough to get you into making huge changes. I would also like to see it as that is the cosmic alarm clock kind of goes on, and often we just turn the pause, but like the snooze button, kind of like, yeah, it's okay. It's not loud enough. But this is where I found out that the body starts talking to us a little bit. And this is the time where people sometimes say it like, oh, the sensitive people go like, oh, I really don't like this. I'm going to start looking into this. And some people tough it out like, oh, it's not a big deal. I take a pill. I take this. I take some workshop and I'll be fine. Well, at 50, we have the Chiron return. So Chiron returns back to our charts somewhere around age 50, 51. And it is kind of the continuance of the midlife. So you could see as the whole thing doesn't stop and end, it's continuance. So what is Chiron? Well, it is, if you see that archetypal picture of a half man and half horse, so it just represents the duality, and it's the duality in us. And it's also considered to be the wounded healer. So it comes back to our life to look at our wounds from our childhood, from our beginning. So how I look at it is that the Chiron return is giving us the opportunity to give ourselves new birth. So the first time around, you have been born to that family, to that religion, to that city. You had not that much choice around it. It has shaped you into who you are and what experience you have gathered all along. But throughout the process, if it was not part of your divine blueprint, it became a baggage. It became that BS that you were holding on, and it really didn't resonate with the spiritual aspect of yourself, with the soul. That's what I'm calling in that intuition, the soul aspect, right? So what happens in the 50s, that the Chiron comes back and just say, okay, that's wonderful, girl. You got all these wonderful experiences, but half of them you don't really need to drag around. It's time that you now choose your family. And it doesn't mean that the other family are not important. They are. But now this time around, it's the spiritual family. You have to bring the spiritual aspect of your existence. And if you look at it from the shamanic perspective or the nature perspective, and we are part of nature, we are starting to realize like, hold on a second. I am more than just a physical body. I have emotions, I have dreams, I have visions, and so on and so forth. So that makes me spiritual, emotional, mental, and all that. So when we start realizing this, that we are part of the air, part of the water, part of the earth, and so on, we start bringing it in. And I was listening to one of your podcasts, and you had kind of already these comments in your podcast when you said, I felt so much better when I was going for a walk. Because when you start taking yourself for a walk, which is so ironic because we should be doing this automatically, we start taking the energy of the air, the energy of the earth into our hearts, into our senses. We're giving ourselves new birth with the spiritual aspect of ourselves. You were talking about meditation. That's the ether. We are start consciously bringing in the vibrational frequency of thoughts that we choose in, and thus deleting the programs that have been put in us. And the programs coming in consciously, because our mind literally creates over 60,000 thoughts a day. 90% are unconscious. So during meditation, what happens, or after meditation, this garbage that you were holding around in your lifetime start coming forward, and you're looking at it like, what? Why did I believe in that? Well, that's silly. Or wounds. Wow, I really suffered, or I was abandoned, or I was ignored, or whatever. And you have to feel it. And you have been betrayed, and you have been lied to, and all these things that we all going through it. And we are choosing consciously with Chiron return. He's helping us to see these wounds, giving us the spiritual allies, the earth, the sun, the water, and all that, to get stronger, to have the courage to look at our wounds, and also the wounds that we caused others. Because if you go into therapist because somebody hurt you, trust me, somebody else is sitting in the therapist chair because of you. So it's that cycle. We have to own it all and be courageous enough to go through this. And so when we're looking at hormones, I find it very interesting is that we're going back into the age where our hormones were not that active yet. So we go back to infancy, literally. Isn't that what we're going through when we are in a midlife crisis? When we're going through the Kundalini rising, when we are not capable of holding back the words that we want to say? Well, that's the child within us trying to get everything out. But now we are adults, so the intellect goes, oh, hold on a second, you can't say that. Well, you don't need to say it. You need to understand why you're saying it, where it came from, what BS belief system had been instilled in you. So all of these things going back into the infancy. Then the teenage times comes in, and again, if you've been a teenager, you know what the heck's going on through your body, and your parents, of course, know. And then during the 30s, you're really solid with your hormones. And that is, again, done on purpose. You have to build your family, build your surroundings, make yourself secure and strong, have the vitality to go through the emotional roller coaster that life gives you. And then at the 50s, it's time. It's like a season. So we are now in the fall. We are collecting the beautiful harvest that we have collected. And we don't have to be the spring and jumpy and being life of the party. The other way around. It's time to sit back, relax, and enjoy the fruit, share it with others, and understand that, yes, hormones will be adjusting back. So yes, they have names in a Western culture, estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, da, 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 da. If you are going into that BS belief system, good luck going into some kind of self-sustainable piece. But if you're looking at the more ancient ways or the intuitive ways that our ancestors have been dealing with it or living with it or thriving with it, you're going to have a completely different ways of looking at it. And if you're looking at the basket of the harvest, come on, our life was so rich. It is beautiful. So we don't have to dwell of what we're feeling right now, but like ponder of how I can share these wonderful things that I experienced. Good, bad, ugly, who cares? That's how I see. It's like the Chiron is bringing us the healing of the duality within us. The good, bad, the whatever we're feeling. It's that battle of the forces. And, you know, one of my favorite quotes, lift the veil of duality and you will see the light. So when we stop fighting that I have pain, I don't have pain and all that, it is tricky. And I am not a medical doctor and people do have to consult with the professionals. I am just approaching that with a different BS, different belief systems.
Mm-hmm. And so tell me, we're in the Chiron because we're in menopause or we're postmenopausal, we're in the 50s. How do we, and we're looking at our infancy, our adolescence, our teenage, our 30s, and where we are now. How do we use intuition to look at the good and create strength and grow into something better versus into some people tend to maybe steer toward the negative?
That's the polarization of it, isn't it? It is the wiring within us. So if we have been wired the last 50 years in an environment that have been mostly negative, and we have bought into that, then most likely we have to do some really deep rewiring in our brain. And there's so many amazing people out there who help me with that aspect. But if you are naturally kind of like looking at the butterflies and seeing the sunshine and rainbows, it will be easier for you because it is not about the polarization. It's about the neutrality of it. So if we have a negative aspect of bringing things in like, oh, this is bad, or spiraling into that, catching that and bringing it into it is whatever it is. It's the neutralization of it that will give you the opportunity to make a decision. But if you have something that you have to fix, to get rid of, that control is an aspect of fear. Fear will spiral you down into suffering. Versus if you're standing in a mountain of choice between fear and then the opposite is love. Love has so much more options of growth. So it's not easy. I'm not going to say it's an easy ride. It is almost like feels like a full-time job because again, we have 60,000 thoughts. So please be gentle with yourself. But if you can catch one of those thoughts that spiraling you down in a behavior and actions that makes no sense, like you are end of the day, like, or you had the big, huge bag of chips you didn't have to have, or you have disagreement with your loved one and you're like, why, what just happened? Sometimes it's that, but sometimes it's your environment still, because it holds the charge of the past that is still reminding you, that's triggering you. So sometimes it's changing the physical and little ways. Clean your closet, bring new colors in. If you're waking up with a cup of coffee, starts with tea. If you are, I don't know, waking up and the first thing you do, you jump in a shower, maybe wait and go for a walk. Like Do something different, drive home on a different route, listen to different podcasts, change a scenery, bring in botanical garden membership in, something different. Because if you bring something else in, it's like a portal, having an opening for shift of consciousness.
How can one decipher the difference between my intuition and my desire?
It is desire. Desire is a very important aspect of wanting something. But the question is, what do you want and why? So the intuition will give you very good understanding, because if you're asking yourself, what am I desiring and why? The why will lead you back into the senses, and the intuition is going to be behind it. So questioning your desire is where the intuition comes in. And then listen for the subtle feelings, because it's something like, I want to go on vacation. That's a desire. It's very innocent. And why is like, well, I need a break. I need to clear my mind. I want to experience different culture and broaden my awareness. And so the intention behind the desire will give you also a clear clue where your consciousness is at that time. Because maybe you want to go on vacation to party, in some resort and just drink yourself every night to amnesia. But there's no good or bad. It's just like where you are on that consciousness level.
Because like sometimes we might have goals and we say, I want to do this. And you might say, it might be all planned out. It's all good. But then your gut is telling you something different. And your desire is, I want this. So it's just like, how do you tune out the desire and listen more to the gut? Because when I think about listening to your gut, I think about reason, like more reasoning, more purpose.
Okay, so intuition does not have reason. Actually, it's very illogical. And so intuition is very impulsive, but it's also very gentle. So the desires on intuitive level are also beneficial to the whole, which means, again, going to the vacation. If I go on a vacation to clear my mind and strengthen my overall body on all levels, isn't that benefiting the humanity, because I'm going to come back as a better person? So that's what I'm saying. That's kind of where the whys is important. But reason, if it's reason, that's your ego. So there's no logic. There's absolutely no logic in intuition. But again, it's very good to question, because there will be answer, but the answer will be lying, and it's very subtle. It doesn't have this big, huge, bold, let's have a podcast so I can reach millions of followers. It just actually is going to make you very humble.
How can women in midlife heighten their intuition, become more in tune with it?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Intuition, it is like we were talking about, it's something within us, right? So it's intuitive, which means from within. So if we're looking to empower ourselves from without, which is from the outside world, that's not going to be self-sustainable. So the key is to intuition is to have the self-esteem, the esteem behind yourself. That is the power in your third chakra, in your gut. And you standing and you know who you are on an individual level. You are self-sustainable. You don't need anyone to tell you you are great, you are pretty, you are successful, you are amazing. None of that really matters to you, because you are self-assured that you are so much more than that. And that automatically builds trust. Because if you trust in yourself, you're not going to be seeking again some other people's validation or opinions or anything beyond that, because everything is within you. That doesn't mean that you're not going to search for expertise in something that you need to have done. That's different. But I'm talking from just some overall, how you build yourself better, like your podcast says, right? How you can make yourself the best. And that trust brings again the confidence. The trust becomes aware. The self-aware brings the intuition in. So awareness is in a subtle world this time around, and this particular midlife, that we don't have to survive in an environment, in a office space, right, where somebody's going to get your promotion or going to get a better deal. You don't have to do that anymore. So the awareness becomes more about, is this relationship something that's going to create the better of me? Is this going to help me to expand on myself? Is this relationship something I can serve as well? Like, is this mutual growing for the better of us? So it's, again, for this time around, it's not about me, like we were in the 30s, which is very important because that is when that third chakra is developing. It's like making ourselves strong. It's about bigger picture of ourselves, something that is connecting us to the others, but not in a needy way. It's about how I can serve others, my neighbors, if it's my community, if it's through podcasts and sending messages to others. So when you go out with that, the awareness of who you're socializing with, what are you watching, how do you feel after all these things? Because the feelings is the huge part of the language of the soul, feelings. However, going back to the hormones, what I'm finding out in this modern world is that people don't like how they feel. They run into the doctor saying, I don't like to feel this way. That's not normal. Well, what do you know what's normal? You've never been 50 before. So what do you know? So how do you know it's wrong? Because every feeling is not right or wrong. It's just a feeling. It's a wave in the ocean. You can ride it. And if you trust in your spiritual aspect of your resilience, you will ride that wave. And understanding that will make you stronger, because you're going to be, it's like Chiron is really bringing us the mastery of ourselves. And the mastery this time around is our emotions. Because that's a beautiful thing about females. We are emotional. I have girls and I love it. I mean, teenage girls with their full of emotions, it's nothing more beautiful than that. Letting them express themselves. It's wonderful. If they know how to express themselves, they're not going to be surprised once they're 50 and they're going to feel emotional. So it's just like, again, moon. What is moon bringing us? Every time that moon brings in, full moon brings to us, is the ability to understand that moon is magnetic, right? And we are full of water. And just like the water rises in the ocean, so does us. So the magnet of the moon is elevating, it's an amplifying the feelings we have within us. And it's nothing more than beautiful way of seeing like, okay, that's interesting. This month, I'm feeling really depressed. I'm actually pretty angry. So what's going on in my life the last 28 days? What is really going on with my life? And I love the full moon because it gives you true feelings. What's going on inside of you. And then the new moon, you probably won't feel that much. Again, I don't want to speak for everyone. I'm just saying. So when you are looking forward to it and you're making journal, and every month you will feel something else, and you will see that makes sense because, oh, maybe I had something going on with my mom. She's not feeling well. I have to take care of my siblings, or my children are going to college, or, whatever that is. That will show in your emotions. But if you run into the doctors and you're trying to mellow it down and make it controllable, control comes from fear, and I've already been there. So it is just not evolving aspect of ourselves.
Yeah. And some people might say that when people start seeing a lot of people show their emotions in a manner that others are not accustomed to, they might say, oh, it's a full moon, the crazies are out.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And it's very true because we have not learned how to deal with emotions healthy. I look at it as I wrote in my first book, Journey of You, where when we're children, again, going back to the infancy and so on and so forth, when we are very emotional and we were already told, oh, that's not nice, Kathy. Oh, that's not really pretty things to say, or whatever we were experiencing. So we recognize it's all good, bad. And then we have drawers for the good and the bad. And then we were rewarded and then we got punished. When we are around midlife, we open up those drawers and they're full and they spill it out. And that's the energy that is within us. That's the anxiety or depression where these drawers are still stuffed really deep. And make sure you don't open them because I don't know what's in them. But again, if you're not feeling on the first levels, which is the first chakras, safe and secure in your environment, if you are scared, like how you're going to make it the next day, it's really difficult to look at the spiritual aspect of yourself. You see, so the Chiron will bring us back into making ourselves safe and secure. Are you safe in your relationship? Are you safe and secure in your job? Make sure you will have all that. And it doesn't mean millions of dollars in the bank account and all that. It means to just have that whole, I am well, I'm okay, I'm good.
So tell me, how do you help people find peace during that transition?
I can give people peace. I feel that showing them the yellow brick road and know that there is so much support out there if they are willing to do the work, and knowing that you're not unique in this. We are all made from the same energy, every single one of us, if it's the male or females, we all going through it. I mean, didn't you notice that the males in the midlife, they go in by the convertibles and they chasing whatever, I'm not going to be judging that and putting them in a category, but they going through that too. And nobody's out there talking about that. Then they looking into the females for some kind of guidance, and then they going quote crazy, right? So it's like, again, it's the men a pause. Like, okay, you can help him because you need to first figure out what's going on with you. And the Chiron is here to guide us. And it's very important that we start nurturing ourselves the way that we have not been nurtured in our first birth. So we're going through birth canal. I was talking about the Chiron giving ourselves second birth, new parents, new family, and so on and so forth. How do you want to give yourself new birth? If you can be any way, how do you want to show up? And don't care about what other people say. If they're calling you crazy, well, who cares anymore? Because that is the beautiful thing about it. I have how many years left? If it's another 50 years or so on, I am this time around going to do what I want to do. And I'm going to say what I want to say with kindness in my heart. Hopefully people understand that's what I'm going with that. It's not like you're going to start cursing out there and thinking that it's okay. It's everything done with kindness because you need to build kindness within yourself. So the Chiron is bringing the changes first with ourselves and then bringing the awareness to the surroundings and then building it into our environment outside of that and so on and so forth. So once you start understanding that help is out there especially because hormone is obviously affecting huge ways the nervous system. We need to rewire the nervous system. So if it's a craniosacrum, if it's an acupuncture, if it's a chiropractor, if it's a massages, if it's a walk in the park, you have to allow yourself to have these beautiful things in your life. Having these special ceremonies, make your life a ceremony. Cup of tea, beautiful book, maybe a show that makes you laugh. That is the important, like, how do you want yourself to be born again? And that's what Chiron brings in.
Do you discuss Chiron in your book, Intuition?
Not at all.
No,
Not at all. That's the thing is that when I saw your podcast and I felt in my book that was not part of it, if that makes sense. But my third book that I'm writing about, yes, I'm already having a couple of chapters on that because I feel my third book is much more aligned with that, which is the spiritual healing. And I feel that the Chiron is bringing really the healing of our spiritual self. It's much more appropriate to that. But hopefully people understand that if they are finding out there the Chiron return and Barbara Hand Clow has a beautiful book, Chiron. It's called Chiron. And if you find people who specialize in that, I feel that they can find a lot of good in it. And, there's all about the soul purpose, right? So if people go in, talk to special astrologists who are aware of the nodes, because there's the north node and south node. The north node is the soul purpose, where you're heading. That is kind of, again, the midlife, where you're heading, versus the south node is what you came in the first part of your life. These are the gifts that you effortlessly can do in your sleep, but they're not challenging anymore. That's where it's boring and all that in your midlife, because it's like, yeah, I can do that, but I don't feel any joy in that. But the north node is kind of like when somebody explains it to you and you're like, what? No, I can't do that, but it's intriguing. It's terrifying, but it's mystical and magnetic. So it's like challenging, but rewarding inside. So there's just so much out there, because again, it's just another way of looking at ourselves. The other people who sharing their BS belief system, there's nothing wrong with that. There's no such a thing as a lie and truth in that aspect. It is just like what belief system you want to engage with at that particular time, because there's a time for every BS, because we learn from something from that. And if that resonates with you, stay. If not, change it. That's the beautiful thing about life. We're constantly changing and moving.
So what can people expect to learn in your book, Intuition, Listening to Your Inner Voice?
What they learn in my book is to trust yourself and understanding the value of it. And I bring a lot of validation to the readers, where you might not even realize that is the intuition. For example, the deception. What is deception versus a lie? To me, deception is very tricky, because deception is not a lie and it's not the truth either. It's the mixture of both. So when people listening to, if it's a client or news media or some kind of a product they push in, it is up to us to discern. And the key is in our feelings. Because if you go into a reason, you're not going to get the clarity. You really won't, because there will be truth and it will be a lie. And you're going to be confused and you go like, heck with it. But if you go into the intuition, it's like, you know what? I'm not going to throw the baby with the bathwater. There's something there. And that's it. And just delve in that, knowing that you're not getting the full truth. And there's also a big word in my book, and that is how do you know the difference between judgment and discernment? Because that's a big one. Judgment is very low vibration. And if you judge in others, and most likely you're judging yourself, right? And that is a BS belief system. That is an archetypal pattern that have been here for thousands of years. It's dying off, I believe, because in new generations, I see the children coming and they do not resonate with that. They really don't. They don't want any part of it. And I love that. But there's still the tail of it. We still get caught up with it. We still judging one another, what they're doing, what they look like, what they're saying, and so on and so forth. But if we can go into that whole, it is whatever it is, and go into the discernment and come in more with the observant eyes and looking at it from, well, that's really interesting. That's another way of doing it. That's another way of expressing itself. That's a way of dressing or whatever that is, and neutralizing it. Because the minute we engage in it, we bring in down very low vibration, and it's not good for us. It really isn't. It's just consume us from within. So when we can actively catch ourselves and like, oh, I recognize that. Oh, here I am doing this again. It's not like you won't do it. You will, most likely. But catching yourself with compassion, that's the start. Those kind of things are in my book. And also, there is the value in it in any environment, really. And I bring my passion, and you talk about desire, my desire to really bring intuition into the mainstream, having it in our kindergarten, having it in our educational system, and trusting that that doesn't gonna make people not welcome the reason and intellect. Far from it. They will feel the difference because their intuition is fully aligned with the intellect. It's like the two become one. The duality, you see, becomes one, the oneness. That's what the intuition brings in. And that's what my book is all about.
That sounds like an amazing book. What are 3 pieces of advice that you would give the listener or the viewer who is listening right now and says, I need to get connected with my intuition, or I need to understand my intuition better? How can they do that? What are 3 pieces of advice?
I think I could go back into the trust, awareness, confidence, but if I would add to it, I would say compassion first, because you will start noticing things. And you also going to notice something really amazing, that you are more than the physical body, and you are a divine being, and you're a sovereign being. And you start yearning for transparency, and you're going to start demanding the authenticity in yourself and others, and the freedom. This is the way I think you are leading towards that soul, towards that intuition, because you start harnessing these, and they will be an autopilot. The freedom, the integrity, the transparency, that authenticity, and you will not settle for anything else.
That's great. Lenka, where can people learn more about you and purchase your book?
I'll make it really easy. Just go on lenka.org, lenka.org, and everything's there, and make it, like I said, really easy.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. I will include all of your information in our show notes.
Thank you so much for having me on the show. It was a wonderful pleasure to be here with you.
All right. So remember the whole menopause idea? It turns out it's really about hitting play on your intuition and tapping into a version of yourself you might not have realized was waiting to shine. Huge thanks for Dr. Lenka Schulze for sharing her incredible insights. If you want to learn more about Lenka or connect with her directly, head on over to createthebestme.com/EP112. And of course, come back next week for another amazing episode created just for you. Until then, keep dreaming big, take care of yourself, and remember, you're beautiful, strong, and capable of creating the best version of yourself. Thank you for watching. Catch you next week. Bye for now.